Many will argue that Nazi Germany was the worst period in history. Nazi leader Adolf Hitler wiped out thousands of Jewish citizens and has left many in shock till this day. This terrible Holocaust sparked World War II, and the world was in chaos. By the time the war ended, Germany had been defeated, and three large world powers, America, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union, discussed what would happen next. You may think that this was the end and everything would be peaceful, but it was just the beginning of yet another terrible event in Germany's history, the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall tore families apart and symbolized a war that could possibly wipe out continents. It was finally resolved when the wall came down. This story begins on February 4th, 1945, in a Russian resort town called Crimea. Even though the war ended in September of that year, Germany was close to surrender. U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Russian Premier Joseph Stalin spoke at the Yalta Conference for post-war occupation of Germany. In this conference, they agreed to let France have control over part of Germany, that a German army must be completely off the table, and that the Soviets would allow free elections to countries liberated from the Nazis. Stalin did not do this, but instead made them all communists. Germany and the liberated zones were split up between the four countries. Later on in the Potsdam Conference, Roosevelt was replaced by Harry S. Truman. Truman believed that the countries liberated from the Nazis should make their own reparations. Winston Churchill and Harry Truman felt that they could not trust Stalin. An example of this is when Truman told Stalin and Churchill about the atomic bomb America created to drop on Japan. When he announced it, Stalin already knew about it. The tension between America and the Soviet Union was very high, and the Potsdam Conference was the last Allied conference these leaders would have. Germany was split into four sectors. In the east was the Soviet Union, and in the west was the United States, Great Britain, and France. Berlin was the capital city of Germany that was 100 miles away from the east and west border, so they decided to split Berlin into four sectors as well. One of the few things the Soviet Union did that sparked conflict between the east and the west was creating a blockade. On June 24, 1948, the Soviets completely cut off railroad and water access to the west as a way to drive them out. In this way, the west had no access to supplies. To take care of this, America and the other allies supported themselves through the Berlin Airlift. This was an airplane service that would carry necessary supplies to them. On May 12, 1949, the Soviets called off their blockade, but the airlift still ran up until September 30, 1949. East Germany was communist, so the people had barely any freedoms when it came to the economy. On July 17, 1953, many East German workers revolted. They wanted better work and living conditions. From the time the blockade ended until 1958, almost 3 million refugees escaped East Germany to live in the West. After many negotiations and meetings, East German Democratic Republic leader Walter Ulbricht demanded that the borders be sealed off. This finally happened in August of 1961. The border started off being lined by barbed wire and eventually became a large concrete wall 96 miles long. While the wall was being built, people could freely cross the border as they pleased. One morning, the people woke and the border was completely sealed off. Nobody could cross it and never will for the next 3 decades. The wall was 12 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and 96 miles long. Topping the wall was barbed wire. On the eastern part of the wall, there was the death strip. Here, there was armed soldiers who would kill on sight, dogs, tripwire, and floodlights. It seemed almost impossible, but over 5,000 people escaped in the 28 years that the wall was up. One notorious escape was by Hans Streckel and Hunter Wetzel, who escaped by hot air balloon. The wall tore up families and friends that were on opposite sides of the wall. In addition, many people lost their jobs because they had no way of getting over. The communist East Germany could be explained as a prison because they had little freedom and no way of getting out. For the U.S., the wall made it difficult to keep an eye on the communist agents. Also, it was hard to keep Berlin as a center of intelligence. In 1971, there was an agreement signed that would make travel to and from the capital, Berlin, easier. Surprisingly enough, the Westerners reacted to the wall very calmly. John F. Kennedy responded by saying, "A wall is a hell of a lot better than a war." He felt that it was the Soviets' natural right to protect their borders. He made his famous Ich bin ein Berliner speech.
Freedom has many difficulties, and democracy is not perfect. But we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in, to prevent them from leaving us.
Throughout the 80s, East German citizens would protest for their freedoms, and Hungary and Czechoslovakia opened their borders. While the wall was up, such people as Martin Luther King Jr. and Ronald Reagan visited. In 1987, Ronald Reagan made his second appearance in West Berlin, where he says one of his most famous quotes.
"Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate." Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, would be under the rule of Walter Ulbricht, Erich Honecker, and Mikhail Gorbachev. The Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany, would be under the rule of Helmut Kohl for the last 8 years until the wall is down. Finally, in 1989, Mikhail Gorbachev decides to open up the border. He wants to democratize and centralize government and economy. He believed in freedom of expression. For his efforts, Mikhail Gorbachev won a Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. America and the Soviet Union became allies.
Though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is, doviai no proviai, trust but verify.
Но значение этого... You repeat that at every meeting.
This led to the downfall of the Communist Party. The Russian dictators wanted to fight back and edited draconian travel rules. When the radio broadcast the new rules, broadcaster Gunter Schabowski jumbled the words, and it was misinterpreted to meaning that they were bringing down the wall. On midnight of November 9th, 1989, people were finally able to cross the border and partied in the streets. Eventually, the officials of East and West Germany spoke, and on October 3rd, 1990, Germany was reunified into one complete country. Helmut Kohl, the leader of the West Germans, became the first chancellor of the newly reunified Germany for the first 8 years of its existence. The Cold War was going on from 1947 to 1991. When the wall fell, so did the threat of the nuclear war between Russia and America. There are evident differences between East and West Germany, one being the unemployment rate that is way lower than West Germany. In 2014, West Germany had about a 6% unemployment rate, while the East had 11% unemployment rate. Also, from 1989 to 2013, the West German population rose by about 4%, while East Germany's decreased by about 14%. The citizens that were part of communism had a very hard time adapting to capitalism. To this day, Germany is still one country and recently competed in the 2018 Winter Olympics under one flag. Germans see the fall of the Berlin Wall as one of the few things in their history that they can be proud of. Therefore, it is still remembered. The greatest thing to come out of the wall, though, is the end of communism and the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall was a conflict for the citizens of Germany, as well as for the Allied countries that had control over Germany. It was finally resolved in a compromise when the wall fell and Germany was reunified. Hopefully, Germany will now have a positive future, and the world leaders will learn that we are better off building bridges, not walls.